you're not experiencing deja vu. This video is a re-upload. And if you don't care why, if you're one of those goblins who comments, video starts at 3 minutes, well, I beat you to it. The actual video starts at
2 minutes and 38 seconds.
So if you want to skip the preamble, then go for it. I originally posted this video last October. I got out of the psych ward for the first time in September. I talked about that in the video, and I sort of viewed this video as like my big comeback project. I put more effort into this video than any other, by far. I mean, just look at this stuff in the spoiler warning. I edit on like the great value version of software. This was extremely difficult and time consuming, like getting myself to stay in place on these moving shots and timing everything perfectly to the music and just getting the voice right and everything like that. The timing of the cuts right took an amount of time that I am not willing to admit to. Like I said, I put everything into this video, but poor little stupid old me, because I wasn't aware that Warner Brothers were gonna come along, a multi-billion-dollar company. They said, screw you, peasant. We're taking all the money. We deserve it. We need more. And it doesn't matter how much you worked on it. We don't give a shit. Don't you even think about using 5 seconds of trailer footage in your video. That's a claim. It's a claim based on a copyright system that is completely made up. Warner Bros., more like Warner foes. Eventually, I was able to get the video past the copyright stuff. What I did was I torched half of it. I just blurred. I tried so much stuff, but I ended up just blurring all of the footage from their movies. Unfortunately, I picked a lot of Warner Brothers movies for that video, and this got it by for one day, and then it was claimed. So again, so it's been sitting with me ever since that I did all this stuff to kind of destroy like kind of one of my biggest passion projects on my channel, and I didn't get anything for it, and now the video's just up like that. So I am re-uploading it in its original version. No more stupid blurring. The music for the spoiler warning is better because I'm using some of that stuff, and I mean that's pretty much it. It's just better. So without further ado, great moments in bad movies, Volume 2. Joker Folie Adieu opens with this great scene. It is a handsomely shot, staged, and acted long take that introduces our new setting, Arkham State Hospital, and provides insight into Arthur's frame of mind. He has grown more timid and depressed since we last saw him, surely in large part due to the poor circumstances surrounding his imprisonment following his murder spree at the end of the previous film. Arkham State Hospital is shown to be a harsh and oppressive environment, and revealed to be so very quickly and efficiently in this extended establishing shot. We also hear the familiar bowing of returning composer Hildur Guðnadóttir's score, primarily played on the halophone, which is a cello-like instrument of her own invention, and this really helps to set the tone and mood, both of which could aptly be described as downbeat. But also the fluidity of the cinematography and the intricacy of the blocking helps to maintain a certain level of energy and momentum. This scene would make for a strong first impression, except for the fact that the movie actually started 5 minutes earlier with a Looney Tunes style parody recap of the prior film, which also exists as an attempt to sort of retroactively recontextualize those events, at least for the first 2/3 of the runtime. But here's the thing. Although this is an unneeded prologue, you could have shown up to the theater 5 minutes late and be none the wiser, it is still, on its own, a pretty great scene. The animation, which is especially great, was done by French filmmaker Sylvain Chomet, who is a 4-time Oscar nominee. If you aren't familiar with any of his films, you still may have seen his couch gag from that one episode of The Simpsons. The music, which is also great, was performed by Nick Cave, so of course it rocks. This scene really does just rock, and it rolls too. As does the first musical number, which is performed at just about the half-hour mark. Arthur has just had his first encounter with Harley Quinn when he learns that his prosecutors are seeking the death penalty. What better time to burst into song? I really like this scene for 2 reasons. The first is that I am biased.
I am a former theater kid, so of course I love musicals, but also this scene just works. It is another nicely choreographed long take, and who cares if it's out of left field? Joaquin Phoenix is at bat, and he hits it out of the park. His performance here is just right. It never feels like he's singing as himself, or as Johnny Cash, or performing with a layer of autotune laid over his vocals. Hildur Guðnadóttir also just gets it. I especially like how she cranks up the brass section halfway through.
For once I can say this is mine, you can't take it.
The inmates in the background all cheering Arthur on and pretending to play instruments just adds to this growing feeling of magical realism, which is immediately undercut by the reveal that all of this was just in Arthur's head. And that's how all the musical numbers in the film work. They're all in his head, and also sometimes in Harley Quinn's head too, I think. And the creative decision to make all of these musical numbers imaginary just sinks this movie. What better way to make every one of these sequences, there are 12 of them, by the way, what better way to make them all feel completely pointless than to have them all be imagined? I do not understand why they did this at all. It completely sucks the air out of like half of this movie, and it almost feels like a compromise, as if Warner Brothers said, hey Todd, you need to make this one a musical. And he said, I don't wanna, and they said, you gotta, and they met halfway in the middle. But surely that was not the case. Not a soul alive asked for this film to be a musical. Todd Phillips was not forced to make this film a musical. I assume that he chose to do so because he wanted to, yet he also made the baffling decision to undermine any sort of dramatic weight that these sequences would carry. Really what it is, it feels like they only half committed to the bit, if you know what I mean. Like, if the bit is Joker, but a musical, you either gotta go all in on that or not do it at all. One of my goals with this video and with this series as a whole is to be positive within reason and talk about these mostly maligned movies from an optimistic viewpoint. Just because a film on the whole didn't come together doesn't mean that it should be written off entirely. Filmmaking is an extremely collaborative process, and through a lot of these great moments and scenes, you can see the effort and talent of different individuals involved shine through a little bit. Also, I would say to varying degrees that I sort of like almost all of these movies, and even when I am trashing them a little bit, my goal is not to sway your opinion of the film. If you like one of these movies, that is great, and I'm not trying to convince you otherwise. I do also need to give a quick spoiler warning, not just for the back half of Joker Folie Deux, but for all of the quote-unquote bad movies that I will be spoiling in this video. Which feels so good to say, by the way. Doing the spoiler warning for the last one was like one of the first things that I did for that video, and that was early on in my stay at the psychiatric care facility that I was at, that I talked about in that video. Which, you know, in some ways wasn't all too different from Arkham State Hospital. But what I'm trying to express is just how grateful I am for all of y'all's support and to be back. It honestly makes me want to burst into song. In fact, for once in my life... Oh, sorry. I forgot to turn this thing on.
Okay. Much better. For once in my life, I won't let sorrow hurt me, not like it's hurt me before. For once, I have someone I know won't desert me, and I'm not alone anymore. For once, I can say this is mine, you can't take it. Long as I know I've got love, I can make it. For once in my life, I've got someone who needs me. For For once I can say this is mine, you can't take it. Long as I know I've got love, I can make it. For once in my life, I've got someone. For once in my life, I've got someone. For once in my life.
I would like to quickly remind y'all that, as always, this video is time-stamped, and there is a full index in the description of all included media. Make sure to comment down below letting me know your favorite moments and scenes in otherwise bad movies, and while you're at it, feel free to like and share this video. Also feel more than free, feel encouraged to support me on Patreon. For a minimum price of just $1 a month, you can have your name listed and shouted out at the end of every future video. Plus, you will gain access to a growing library of shorter videos, which does now include the copyright claim to hell and back previous great moments in bad movies video that I made. Although, to be honest, I am a little bit relieved that that video got taken down, but if you want to hear more about that, then be sure to head over to Patreon when you get the chance. I would be remiss if I didn't quickly mention a couple of other great scenes from Joker, Folie, Etude. I really like Joaquin Phoenix's rendition of the Joker from the 1965 musical The Roar of the Grease Paint, The Smell of the Crowd, where the song was originally sung by Anthony Newley, who was one of the most unique Broadway voices ever.
There's always a Joker in the pack. There's always a cardboard clown.
If you thought he sounded a little bit like David Bowie, that is because he was actually one of Bowie's biggest influences. In my opinion, this scene is the only part in either of these movies where this Joker feels like the Joker of the source material, the clown prince of crime. I really like the bit where he beats the judge to death with his own gavel. That's just such a Joker move. It feels right out of the comics, or like something that Jack Nicholson's Joker would have done. While this is my favorite musical number in the film, it is not my favorite part of the movie. That honor goes to the courtroom scene, where Arthur is first allowed to defend himself in full clown makeup, where he also does a foghorn leghorn impression that goes on for a really long time, way too long, but I don't love this scene because of that. I love it because of Lee Gill. Lee Gill is the most underrated and underappreciated part of these films. He is the unsung hero of the Joker movies. His performance here is heartbreaking. The pain that you can hear in his voice when he describes the trauma he suffered as a result of Arthur's actions is very convincing and honestly kind of devastating. Lee Gill actually seems like a pretty cool guy in real life. The other day I listened to a podcast that he was on and he was very funny and seems like a fun person to be around. That same day, I also watched a documentary about the Chicago Bulls, the NBA basketball team. The Bulls were an absolutely dominant franchise during the 90s, in large part due to how unstoppable Michael Jordan was. But present day, they have this big problem where they can't attract any good players because these guys don't want to play in the shadow of those Jordan teams, and I don't blame them either. If I were one of those dudes, I'd steer well clear. And if I were an actor who was offered the role of the Joker, I would turn it down for the same reason. Heath Ledger was the Michael Jordan of Jokers. No one will ever top that. There may come other great and nuanced takes on the character, but will they be on Ledger's level? Almost certainly not. Also, he delivers my second favorite line reading of the word yeah ever.
You think you could steal from us and just walk away?
Yeah. And if you're wondering what my favorite is, it's Jeff Bridges from Tron Legacy.
Am I still to create the perfect system? Yeah.
But enough talk about the Joker. Let's talk about Batman instead. One of these days, I will be releasing the pancake cut of the Batman, which removes that Joker scene and leaves everything else the exact same. I will also eventually be releasing the pancake cut of The Flash, which removes literally everything except for Michael Keaton's scenes. I watched this movie earlier in the week in my living room, and I was at the part where the alternate universe Flash gets his speed powers, and he runs so fast that all of his clothes burn off, while a bunch of mayhem ensues in the background. Yeah, my wife walked into the room while that was happening. She had just made herself lunch, and she sat down next to me on the couch, watched 15 or so seconds of Ezra Miller stumbling around butt naked in the middle of the street before wordlessly gathering her things and leaving. I do not blame her for this one bit, but she should have stuck around for 15 more minutes because little did she know the best part of the movie was right around the corner. After the Flash travels back in time to 2013, he realizes that he has accidentally created a new alternate timeline where there is no Superman, Wonder Woman, or Justice League, meaning that there will be no one to stop General Zod's impending invasion. However, the Flash and his alternate self discover that there is still a Batman. So they go to Wayne Manor, and lo and behold, who is home but Michael Keaton, who finally makes his triumphant return as the Caped Crusader. Michael Keaton in this movie is like Clint Eastwood at the end of Unforgiven, when he shows up at the saloon and everyone realizes that they're in serious trouble because he is the real deal. There's a scene earlier on in The Flash when Ben Affleck appears as his version of Batman. It may just be because the costume department did him dirty. The mask looks real weird here, but I don't know. Even beyond that, something just doesn't quite feel right. When Michael Keaton walks into the Batcave, while Danny Elfman's original Batman theme swells in the background and says,
"Yeah, I'm Batman,"
it feels right. Yeah, he's Batman, and for the next 10 minutes, this is his movie. We get this awesome shot of him paragliding into Siberia while the Batplane is silhouetted by the moon above him, and again, Danny Elfman's music sounds so good. Then he opens up a can of whoop-ass on a bunch of soldiers, which is unfortunately intercut with shots of Ezra Miller vomiting, but we will do our best to ignore that. I love that they didn't fix the Batsuit's neck, so anytime he wants to turn around, he still has to completely rotate his entire torso. After rescuing Supergirl, Batman spearheads their escape, which is unfortunately intercut with shots of Ezra Miller screaming bloody murder, but we will do our best to ignore that. There is a decent little bit towards the end of the film where Batman takes down one of Zod's henchmen, which would be a great moment if it didn't look like a PlayStation 2 cutscene. The special effects in this movie are absolutely horrendous. There is this insane scene early on in the film where the nursery wing of a hospital collapses and like a dozen babies end up in full freefall, plummeting towards the streets below, and the Flash rescues them sort of Rube Goldberg style, and all of this just looks god awful. Even though the CGI babies somehow look worse than Renesmee from Twilight, I am thankful that the filmmakers had the common sense to not let Ezra Miller around any real babies. You know, this movie kind of made me hate myself a little bit because I try really hard to not be a part of the plot hole police. I do not care for the CinemaSins style of watching film. If a movie has great characters and a compelling plot, I am very willing to overlook gaps in science fiction logic. For example, I think Looper is a great movie, thrilling from start to finish, super original and unexpected, but there are many people out there who trash it simply because its time travel rules don't perfectly add up.
That's not how time travel works.
Time travel isn't real. Stop watching movies like you're a detective looking for gaps in an alibi. But yeah, The Flash did that to me. Early on in the film, the Flash decides to travel back in time 20 or so years to prevent his mother's murder, which was pinned on his father, who in actuality is innocent. By the way, the circumstances surrounding this are absolutely ludicrous. Apparently, in the middle of the day, in broad daylight, in this upper middle class looking suburb, someone just waltzed into their house, stabbed the Flash's mom in the stomach, and left. By the way, we learned nothing more about this. The killer is never revealed. But what's even worse is that the Flash's plan to stop this crime from ever happening is not to intercept the killer, but instead to travel back to that morning when his mom was shopping for groceries and stick a can of tomatoes in her cart because she forgot them, which is why his dad wasn't home to stop her murder because she had sent him out to get canned tomatoes. Doing this obliterates the space-time continuum or whatever and causes the multiverse to collapse in on itself. All of this is actually helpfully explained to us later in the movie with spaghetti.
Stupid enough to mess with time. What you eventually end up with is this.
I also don't really understand how the Flash's powers work. I always thought his deal was that he can run and move so incredibly fast that time essentially slows around him. But in this, it's that he can willfully vibrate the very atoms of his being so fast that he can even phase through walls and other solid objects. While I don't particularly care for this version of the speedster superhero archetype, I do have quite a bit of sympathy for any filmmaker attempting to pull off any version of that post-X-Men Days of Future Past. That sequence where Quicksilver saves everyone during Magneto's jailbreak is the Heath Ledger of speedster scenes. Also, just one of my favorite moments in all of cinema, full stop. That sequence is actual movie magic. I remember seeing that in the theater opening night, and the crowd was pretty rowdy, but once that Time in a Bottle by Jim Croce needle drop hit, everyone shut up and locked in. Six Underground is a movie where tons of things happen. In fact, there is always something happening, and these things happen constantly, one after the other, nonstop, for 2 hours straight. However, off the top of my head, I don't think I could tell you the what, where, and why of any of them. Watching this film is like engaging in dopamine-chasing scrolling on Reddit or TikTok. One moment, Ryan Reynolds is crashing a Red Bull-sponsored airplane into a lake while Muse's Dig Down plays in the background. The next moment, he is speeding through the streets of Florence, Italy, while the Spice Girls are singing Wannabe, and then all of a sudden, 6 months have passed. And he is now in Paris, attending a live performance of Richard III. Then he's getting down and dirty with a bartender, while Dig Down plays again. Everyone is constantly dripping with sweat. I wouldn't be surprised if they were all sweating Red Bull. That's just the vibe here. For 90% of its runtime, this movie treats you like a dartboard, just hurling one thing at you after the next. But that last 10% is absolutely incredible. So Ryan Reynolds and his pals chase the bad guy and all of his minions onto his yacht, which has been surrounded by 4 underwater super magnets that are supposed to activate some kind of trap at the push of a button on Ryan Reynolds' phone, but he drops it and it breaks. And then there's this big shootout where the bad guys are able to gain the upper hand, but just in the nick of time, Ryan Reynolds gets his phone to work and the resulting chaos does not disappoint. I absolutely adore this set piece. I think it is just completely spectacular. Watching all of these henchmen get ripped back and forth across the yacht, like ping pong balls colliding along the way with all sorts of debris and detritus, is incredibly entertaining and strangely satisfying. I will say, though, that the stunt work on display here is incredible. I made a mental note to myself during this sequence to go on IMDb later and see if it won a bunch of stunt awards at whatever the Oscars for stunt awards is. And lo and behold, this movie won Best Stunt Rigging at the 2020 Taurus World Stunt Awards. Well deserved. It was also nominated in 6 other categories. I was pretty disappointed, though, to find very little behind the scenes footage and information about this sequence, but thank goodness for the Taurus World Stunt Awards' website, which is somehow, as far as I can tell, pretty much the only place on the internet that actually describes how they pulled this off. When activated, the stunt performers' bulletproof vests and guns are pulled from one side of the ship to the other and then back again. This was done practical. All stunt performers were attached to a wire and they were pulled with high-speed winches and pneumatic ratchets. Performers were de-accelerated upon impact and performers were held into place by wires to simulate the magnetic field holding them in position. CGI was only used for some debris flying through the air. How is there not a half-hour-long documentary about this? Almost all of the movie's behind-the-scenes featurettes and promos are about this stupid green car. Who cares? This magnet thing is so much cooler. But as much as I'd like to drone on and on about Ryan Reynolds and his super magnets, I also need to talk about Johannes Roberts' 2021 film Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City, which actually isn't all that bad. It's worse than that. It's boring. The film on the whole is just another uninspired and underfunded feature-length video game adaptation. Also, where are the raccoons? Why is there not a single raccoon in this movie? There should have been at least one. The actors are all doing their best, but in the end aren't able to avoid mostly just looking like cosplayers running around, with the exception of Donald Logue, who fits into the role of exasperated small-town police chief Irons like a glove. There is an authenticity to his performance that is not present anywhere else in the film, and he is a key player in its best scene. As a zombie virus spreads rapidly throughout Raccoon City, Irons attempts to escape in his vehicle but is stopped by a group of soldiers attempting to control the outbreak. This is all captured in a long take from the POV of the passenger seat, while Journey's Any Way You Want It plays over the radio. Tensions quickly rise between other people attempting to flee the city and the militants before escalating into a full-on Kent State-type incident. Irons throws his vehicle into reverse and narrowly escapes through a hailstorm of bullets. This sequence is brief, but really well shot and put together. Irons' running commentary over the whole situation is also just pretty funny. Otherwise, all I can say is that I am glad that this franchise was finally able to escape Paul W.S. Anderson's stranglehold, and I am very excited to see Zach Krieger's take.
I feel like I'm chomping at the bit to make this thing. I know there's been a lot of speculation online that I should just be doing an original next and not an IP, but I don't think that those people will have that complaint when they see this because it is an original. I think it's going to be really cool, and I've never seen a movie like it. So I'm like beyond excited making this.
Behold the joys of late-stage capitalism.
David Blue Garcia's 2022 straight-to-Netflix legacy sequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, of the same name minus the, is notably one of the few horror legacy sequels that isn't just trying to be the original. Instead, it's trying to be the 2018 Halloween reboot. In a misguided attempt to create its own version of Laurie Strode, Sally from the original is shoehorned into the movie only to be killed off and literally thrown into a pile of garbage within the next 10 minutes. The film's entirely asinine plot revolves around this group of influencers who are attempting to build some sort of Jonestown-esque TikTok utopia somewhere outside of Austin. The dialogue in this movie is absolutely unbearable. Unfortunately, I can really hear the writer's voice coming through these lines, and it is the voice of someone who is terminally online beyond reproach.
Y'all have a nice day now.
Thank you.
Gentry fuckers.
Gratefully, this movie is barely a movie. It is extremely short, clocking in at just about an hour and 14 minutes. It is also one of the most impressively shot terrible movies I have ever seen. Lots of really nice wides, plus there's a handful of really cool shots in a sunflower field. Leatherface this go around is played by Mark Burnham, who I think gives a very intimidating, basically entirely physical performance. My Cincinnati Bengals should sign him to be on their offensive line because he is massive, and honestly, probably better than our actual starters. Most of the blood and gore effects are thankfully practical, which always looks better than CG, and in the film's best scene, they are gloriously put on full display. All of the influencers are aboard this big party bus when a chainsaw-wielding Leatherface pays them a visit. He's greeted by what surely must be one of the worst lines of dialogue ever put to screen.
Try anything and you're canceled, bro.
Frankly, I think Leatherface responds as reasonably as anyone could possibly be expected to. The ensuing massacre is what I would imagine an R-rated version of that Darth Vader scene from Rogue One would look like. Honestly, I wonder if they took inspiration from that sequence. The influencers' deaths are all phenomenally brutal and also creatively varied. Leatherface cuts his way through them like Anakin Skywalker in a field of sunflowers. Surely, I'm the only person in the world to draw multiple parallels between this and Star Wars. I also worry that I am making this scene sound really fun. It's not. It's actually really intense. The carnage is both disturbing and distressing. It is a harrowing, gruesome shower of disembodied limbs, blood, and viscera set against a soft blue neon glow. Don't get me wrong, it is awesome, but in a most grand and terrible way. Throughout this video, I have really tried my best to say some positive things about each and every one of these films, but sweet, merciful heavens, oh my lord, the 2024 remake of The Crow is one of the worst movies that I have seen in my life. I love Bill Skarsgård. I think he is a terrific actor, but he is horrible in this movie. The only thing I know about FKA Twigs is that she made that really dramatic song about her breakup with Robert Pattinson, but she's also in this movie and is not good. A good chunk of the first act is bafflingly set in this bizarre rehab / boot camp combo. Every time Bill Skarsgård's character dies, he returns to the afterlife where he talks to whoever this guy is supposed to be, whose dialogue is not only very poorly ADR'd, but you can actually hear the room tone pop in whenever he speaks.
Do I look like an angel?
You can fix this in Audacity. I had actually never seen the original Crow, so I gave it a watch, and for about half an hour was absolutely horrified to find that it was just as bad before I realized that I was accidentally watching one of these straight-to-DVD sequels. I was very relieved when I watched the real deal to find that it does, in fact, absolutely rule. Brandon Lee, who tragically was killed during the film's production, gives a rightfully iconic performance. In retrospect, I actually find the remake sort of disrespectful, like Brandon Lee deserved better than this. However, there is one sequence towards the end that is not only a good scene, but it is a fantastic scene. This is by far the widest gap between quality of the movie and quality of its best moment. I have no idea how this scene found its way into this movie. I cannot believe that the same filmmakers who made the rest of the film made this incredible opera house fight sequence. So Bill Skarsgård rolls up, not in his finest weekend duds, but shirtless in a trench coat, wielding a sword, and he just goes to town on these goons, and it is awesome. While there is an over-reliance on CG blood and gore, the fight choreography is still top-notch. The entire sequence is synchronized to Giacomo Meyerbeer's 5-act opera Robert le Diable, and is done so to absolutely delightful effect. There is a fantastic rhythm and flow present here that cannot be found anywhere else in the film. I especially like how they intercut and timed the finale from Act 4 of Robert Le Diable with the fight's like big climax. It just rules. This sequence is great. Unfortunately, the violence does kick off with another extremely unprofessional bit of editing. I mean, just look at this cut. So yeah, while I do think that this scene is great, I most certainly do not think that it is in any way perfect. In fact, I don't necessarily believe that any of these great moments are perfect, just like the movies in which they are housed. They each have their flaws, as does every film ever made. Art is never perfect, and neither are we. I am often reminded of embarrassing moments in my life, and I can't help but cringe at so many of the things that I have said and done. I am sure many of you can relate, but I must say, if you are ever feeling down on yourself or hopeless and lost, which is more than fair, things are really hard out there right now, I would still encourage you, as did my therapist from the aforementioned psych ward, encouraged me to be kind to yourself. Even on days where maybe you are feeling like a bad movie, do not forget that those two still have their great moments. Thank y'all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, even just half as much as I did making it, although I did get like sick twice while making this video. If you can't tell by my voice, it's a whole thing. But shout out to Zudo, whose lovely voice you may remember from the Cosmic Horror video. He was the first one to guess this video's topic correctly based off of the hint that I posted. And of course, thank you so much to all of my patrons. Aaron Howard, Braden Surfos, Barbecutie, BAAM Brandon, Avi, Alex, Addison S, Cooper Jones, Christian Daniel Enriquez, Lance B, Curbing, Katie La Bombard, Joy Barnett, Jay Isite, Garrett H, Ethan, Drew K, Totally Awesome, Sean C, Sarah, Ubaba, NYX or Nix, Knoll Productions, Nina Verkowski, Natty, Muffin, Martha Barnett, and Levi Barnett.